Hello everyone, it's Venom Finance from Ballistic Songwriting, and welcome to this week's live Q&A. Let's go! Live! And there we go. Cheers. Alright fellas, how's it going? It's 6 p.m. here in Germany, Nordhorn, and it's been a rough week, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I don't get sick ever, and so this for me is weird. But once every year, I have this horrible week where I get all of my allergies come in one spot to meet, and like there's a big meet and greet, and all the allergies get together, and everyone's having fun except me. So that's kind of what happened, and on top of that, pile up the GDPR, which has been a pain in the neck, because there's so many little things that you have to pay attention to. Like, you don't want to get sued, obviously, so there's just all these tiny little, shitty little things that you have to take care of. So that was really annoying. And then working on the new music production course, which has been fun, but also a lot of work since we're moving into the last kind of stages of that. Yeah, so there's been a lot of things, and I have chronic headaches, so always get headaches, and you know, my allergies are not really helping with that. So it's been a tough week, and I almost thought I wasn't going to do this live Q&A today, but you know what? Here I am, because I actually have some really cool news for you guys, and I'm going to repeat this a couple of times during this live Q&A. If I don't, please remind me to do so. But I have some cool news for you. Actually, you know what? I think I might do this a little bit later when there's a little bit more people in the chat. But first of all, let's say hi to everyone who's already here. How's it going, Gapar, Kai Ellis, and Shock is back. How's it going, you guys? Hey, bro, what's up? I'm okay, I guess. I just wanted to say good. I'm alright. I'm alright. Let's put it like that. You maybe can't see it on this webcam because it's not the highest, you know, best resolution, but I'm kind of, yeah. I don't know what you call it. What you like? Everything is like closed up here and headaches and shit like that. So, but I'll see if I can give you guys some good answers today. I hope I can. Cool. Again, Philip Steenbergen, are you here? I would really appreciate, again, if you could do the protocol for everything, because you did a really great job with the last couple of videos. If not, please let us know, and someone else will hopefully take care of it. So if no one has commented on this video quite yet, then please just leave a comment with all of the timestamps for the different questions. So if someone else is looking for a specific question, they can just go to the comments and find the question there. Alright, cool. Guys, if it's up to me, we can move into the questions. If you have any, just let me know. Kai says, have you heard the new Backstreet Boys song, Don't Go Breaking My Heart? I have, but only like briefly. I haven't really like properly listened to it. But it feels like, yeah, it's like from what I remember, and again, I haven't really properly listened to it, it feels like a really like a 90s callback, and I think they did a good job with that. I just think it sounds like they didn't really evolve their sound as well. So for me, as someone who's not necessarily a Backstreet Boys fan, it feels like, oh, they're just rehashing their old sound again instead of trying something new. It's not the boldest move, is what it seems like to me. But again, I'd have to listen to it again, so maybe I'm completely wrong about this. But that's just what it seemed like to me. Have you listened to Pop Artist's latest album? Is there... Did you censor that out, or... Oh, are you asking about Pink's latest album? Because I still haven't listened to Pink. As I said, last week was pretty crazy. Kaya says, what do you think about the tempo change at the beginning of Ariana Grande's No Tears Left to Cry? Really love it. I think it's really great when pop music tries to do some more daring things. I think it's really great. And I think it's cool that every now and again you get people who dare to do something like that, and then it's still a big success. So I really love that. There were a couple of songs, pop songs, that seem very simple at first, but if you listen to it a little bit closer, there's actually quite a bit going on. I'm always referencing the riddle, which was the da 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 da, which has some really weird bits in there, and it seems like it's almost polytonal at points. I mean, at least the version that I know. Maybe there's different versions of it, but because as a kid, when I heard it, it just seemed like a really standard pop song to me. But as I grew up and heard it again and I was like in a supermarket or something, I was like, wow, this is really weird and crazy what they're doing here. So I really dig it when, especially when you come back to a song and you realize it surprises you because there is something in there that you weren't aware of before. This last month, a lot of cool pop albums have come out. Also, mandatory weekly reminder about Pink's album. Yeah, there we go. What kind of pop albums have come out, Gapar? Can you tell me a couple? Maybe I can do an album series on one of those next month if I find the time. Maybe. It's gonna be a crazy month next month, but I'll see. Maybe I can do one. Would be fun, because I also want to stay up to date with that kind of stuff. That's why I actually really love the album series so much, is because it like keeps me up to date and like keeps me in the loop with all the latest releases. I really like that, and to like properly listen to those records, and like this job gives me an excuse to actually do that, and I really love that. Okay, Owen Severin says, I have the opportunity to work with a rapper who has a manager and a record deal. His manager likes my sound and said he would feature me on one of his songs for $100. Should I go for it? He will be featured on YouTube's Artist of the Rise section in the next couple of months. So, do you get $100 or do you pay $100? Because that seems weird if you have to pay $100. That screams scam to me, as if that's not a real deal. Hello, Earthlings, says Marino Moanza. How's it going, man? Yeah, so I don't think I would ever pay someone to do a feature. Like if I have an artist and I want them to play on my record, I will pay them for it if necessary, obviously. And you know, with musicians, obviously studio musicians, that's a whole nother question. But if I'm the main artist and someone else is going to feature on my record, like I'm going to pay them. You know, that's fairly standard in this industry. And even if someone else is the big artist, if they want to do a feature with me, then I shouldn't have to pay for that. Yeah, pay $100 to be featured in one of his songs. It seems like a legit deal, and I know the rapper personally. So, seems weird to me. Well, if you know him personally, you know, and if it's, I mean, it's just $100, and if you believe him, if he's true to his word, so to say, if he's a trustworthy kind of person, then I don't see why not. It just, to me, it feels kind of weird. It's not something I would expect in this industry quite that much. I don't know. Also, $100 is such a, like, I mean, it's such a small amount. Like, it feels almost weird. Like, why would you pay $100 to I don't know. If he's your friend, then why can't you do it for free? I don't get it. Like, you both want to make a great song together, right? So, to me, that seems a little bit weird. But, I mean, if you're cool with it, and if $100, if you have the $100, and if the whole thing blows and it like doesn't work out at all, and if you say like, okay, but it's $100, I'm fine with that, and maybe you get a professional recording out of it, then I guess fine. Maybe that's where this is coming from. Maybe they put a lot of money into the recording, and so they just say like, hey, if you want to pitch in $100, then we're cool, because the whole thing is going to cost $500, and if you pitch in $100, then that would be a fine deal for me. Like if you both kind of pull your weight a little bit. If it's just for the song, like just to buy yourself in, I find that kind of weird. But again, if he's a good guy, and if you trust him, and if you trust the manager, then why not? It just seems weird to me. It wouldn't be something that my friends would ask me to pay, I think, just to be on the record, you know? Again, if it was something like buying into the recording time or something like that, I think that would be fine with me, but again. All right. Do you think it's okay to be safe with pop songs, doing what's proven and works formulaic, says Thomas Wolfe? That's a really excellent question, and I actually had this conversation with a bunch of producers here in Germany, because it's something that I've been thinking about quite a lot as well, and it really boils down to two big groups of producers that I've talked to. One group says, you know what, I'm in the service industry, whatever someone wants, I will give it to them, and so if the German audience wants this particular sound, and that's the music that I'm going to write, and I just follow what's already there. And they're really good at analyzing what's in the charts right now and transforming that into something that sounds like it, but that isn't that thing, right? So that's their entire job, and there's a lot of A/Bing, and I've been in those sessions, you know, where it was a constant switching back and forth between the song that we were writing and whatever, you know, Tovalu's new song or whatever, you know, they say like it has to sound like that. So it was a constant A-Bing between those two tracks. And that's, to be honest, how it is most of the time in this industry. However, there's a difference between that, the service industry, and if you want to be an artist and if you want to present yourself in this market. I think it's a different thing. In that case, I think you really should be a little bit bold because you want people to notice you. If you're in the service industry, you don't necessarily want people to notice you. You want to do the best job for the artist. You want to make sure they get a great song out of it, a great production. That's your job as a producer. However, if you're the artist yourself, then really what you want is you want to have an impact. You want your song to release and people to go, what the? You know, you want people to turn heads and go, you know, give a double take and say like, what the hell is that? What did I just watch? What did I just hear? So, and again, the safe route is obviously going with what everyone likes. But if you want to be big and if you really want to have an impact on this world, then it's more about, yeah, as I said, making an impact and doing something that's bold and trying something new. Not saying that any of these approaches is correct or incorrect, since a lot of my friends who follow the first approach do really well, and you know, have produced some huge bands here in Germany. But it's up to you what you want, you know. Thinking of someone like Brian Eno, who never made compromises, who it feels like really has his own sound and really inspired a lot of other producers, and that's why the charts sound a little bit Brian Eno, always have a little bit of Brian Eno in them. But he's really the one who started that all. He has his own thing, and he started the movement all on his own. So, but yeah, I mean, it depends. If you're working for yourself and if you really want to make a big splash with your next release, then I think being safe is quite the opposite of safe. I think it's rather risky. And a book that I'd highly recommend to you if you're interested in this subject is, again, Purple Cow by Seth Godin. I've mentioned it a number of times on this live Q&A and in several of my videos. But that book really talks about safe is risky, risky is safe, I believe is one of the quotes in that book. And it's something that I've always stuck to. But again, it is up to you. It's your decision how you want to handle all of this. And it really depends on what your goals are with this. If it's just to make money, I think being formulaic and following principles, I think, is a valid strategy. If you want to be remembered, but maybe not have that much money, then maybe go with the other route. Shak says, been feeling anxious since final exams are approaching. Stressful stuff. In addition, I feel bad I don't have time for writing songs and working on music. Any advice? Maybe you've gone through something similar. Yeah, right now, actually. I haven't written something in... Oh, well, I did actually write something this month. But I've written fairly little this past month, in this May. Yeah, I mean... Sometimes you get a lot of, you know, stuff to work on, and so sometimes you can't write as much as you want to. As long as you get back to it, I think it's fine. You know, sometimes it's great to have a little bit of a break because you like get all these ideas while you're on break, and maybe sometimes like I've had those periods where I didn't write on anything, and then I came back into it and was just super motivated to write some great stuff because I had so many ideas. And even when I'm not writing, I always write down stuff. You know, I have, as I've shown you guys this multiple times, but on my cell phone I have text file with just lyrics ideas, tons of lyrics ideas, and I have my audio recordings where I just like record my ideas, and that always happens no matter whether I'm currently like really properly writing or not. But when I'm on a, you know, driving somewhere or something, I don't have a car radio, so I'll just sing melodies into my cell phone when I find a good one. So I'm always kind of writing, and if I'm not writing, I'm preparing for writing sessions. And also something that might maybe not help. Helping is maybe the wrong word, but something that I really, yeah, it's not the right moment to say this actually. Like I'm gonna pull back on that one. But there we go. Don't feel bad about it. We all go through those periods of times. Just come back to it when you're ready, and I'm sure you'll start with some new great ideas for that. Okay, Gapar says James Bay, Shawn Mendes, Charlie Puth. Oh, cool. Did what's it called? Vocals or something, or it's called something like that, right? Melodies or something. It's just something like that. finally come out. Churches, Post Malone, Anna Marie, Arctic Monkeys, all had very cool albums come out this last month. An album series episode on any of those, maybe. That sounds really great. I actually really would love to do one on Charlie Puth's new album, because I haven't really been paying too much attention to him, but everything that I've heard from him so far I thought was really great. As I said before, one of my favorite song last year was Attention by Charlie Puth. Just musically, I thought that was just such a great track. The production was just amazing. All right, Moreno says, your humor in your courses definitely helps the learning process. Thanks. Advice on practicing one-note melodies. Well, thank you very much, first of all. Practicing one-note melodies, do you mean in terms of the practicing writing one-note melodies, like getting better at writing one-note melodies, or is it about producing them or singing them, or like performing them? Because those are really three very different things. Thomas Wolfe says, so I wrote this chorus with two similar but different melodies. I'm trying to determine the best one, but each brings different things. One starts with higher energy and then declines, the other the opposite. So basically, do I have the high... So basically, that sounded really weird. So basically, do I have the highest energy at the beginning of the chorus or end? I think both can work. If you have two choruses that you really like, why not turn it into two songs, really? Or what I've also seen people do is that they take the second chorus and turn that into the bridge. So for bridges, typically, since those are supposed to build a little bit of tension, it might be a great idea to start with to go with the low energy to high energy, and for the chorus, go with high to low energy, which is typically energetically makes a lot of sense, because then you got that jump from the verse to the chorus from low to high energy, and in the bridge it starts low, builds, and then we go to the big chorus at the end there. If that doesn't work, feel free to turn it into two songs. I've done that in the past. There's no shame in that. Maybe you have maybe it's the same lyrics or something, or it's very, very similar. In that case, I would say, I don't know. I've never had that situation, actually. I don't think. So when you produce it, I don't know if you produce your own music, but if you do, see how it goes. Like, see which one just jumps to the table quicker. You know what I mean? So like, if you produce it and one of them just clicks, everything just works. You find the right sounds for it, and it just like sounds great, and the other one doesn't, then you know which one to go with. That's what I would say. Cool. But in general, I think I personally like the choruses better that start big and end small. Personally, like having like a big note at the beginning, and then kind of trailing off. It really depends on what you want to do, obviously, and I'd have to hear it first. But in general, that's kind of how I would handle it, I think. Moreno says, how does an artist balance theory such as a new melody tactic, or focusing on verses, etc., and also balancing recording? How does an artist balance theory, such as new melody tactic, as a new melody tactic, or focusing on verses, etc., and also balancing recording? Balancing recording. So, how do you, so trying to rephrase that question. So, you're an artist, and you want to know so I want to focus on my performance, obviously. How do I take the theory into consideration, and how do I take the recording process into consideration? Well, for me, that's really three different things, and they come at different times. So when I'm writing something, it usually starts with one of those new melody tactics. I just like figure out, like, you know what? For this verse, I want to do X. You know, I want to do something that has a very weird rhythm, or I want to do something that has this weird shape, or I want to write something that has a lot of repetition or something like that. And then I'll jam with that idea until I find something that's cool. That's when the performance comes in. That's when I slowly figure out, like, how can I sing this so that it really sounds good. And then when I record it, that's when you think about the recording. So it's really three separate steps. It's not something that I think about all too much at the same time. There is a little bit of thinking about the recording process when I write something, but not so much about the recording, but more about the production. I will sometimes, when it comes to my ideas for a new melody, I'll sometimes think about, you know what, I want something where there's a lot of delays or something, so I have to leave some spaces here. And when I sing it, when I perform it to myself, in my head I'm hearing those delays filling up those gaps. So that's something that I'll sometimes do, and that happens more and more the more you get into music production. It makes it easier to get there. But apart from that, typically it's it's never really a problem. It doesn't feel like there's three wolves fighting inside of you. It feels like there's it's just a multiple step kind of process. All right, guys, we've come to this point in this live Q&A where I want to give you guys something awesome. So I've thought very long and hard about this, of maybe just making it available to everyone. But since you guys show up every single week here, and Thomas Moreno, you know, Shock, all you guys, and you know, so many others, thanks so much for being here on this live Q&A. I really appreciate it, and I want to show you guys how much I appreciate it. So some of you have been asking about my music production course, and I have good news. It is practically done. So what I want to do for this course is something completely new. I want to do beta testing for it first, meaning I want to select a few people, and the number in my head right now is 20 people, to go through the course, and at the end of it, give me some feedback and say, like, you know what, I was really missing this, or are we going to get to this? So what I want to do is, for the first 20 people that write me an email, and again, my email is me@holistic-songwriting.com, me@holistic-songwriting.com. The first 20 people who write me an email about this, I'm going to make the course available just to those people before it's available to anyone else in the world, for constant reviewing and giving feedback off the course. Constant is a really big word. What I mean is, like, watch the course, tell me what you think. Is there some big chunks that you feel are missing? Did you have some questions? Were some things unclear? And you're going to get this completely free, so you don't have to pay a thing. It's just my way of saying thank you for, you know, being on this live Q&A. I really, really appreciate that. And yeah, so do write me an email. Again, I'll say the email again, me@holistic-songwriting.com. You can also just answer any one of my newsletters that you've gotten in the email. And yeah, there's one caveat though. You'd have to be subscribed to Teachable already, so you have to have a Teachable account for this. And if you don't, well, let me know. We can figure something out. But so if you've already bought one of my courses, it's going to be a little bit easier. Otherwise, we'll have to figure out how to do that. I'm sure that's possible somehow. Just let me know, and I can subscribe you to, or sign you up, enroll you in that new course. So before we move on, just a quick word on what the course, this first part of the course, entails. So the whole production course is going to be divided into 3 big chunks. And this first one is really only about getting to know the software, which is Logic Pro X, and writing your first bunch of songs. So it's not targeted at intermediate or professional producers, not at all. It's really for those songwriters who want to know how to get into music production, who who write songs, who are musical, who know how to write great arrangements, but they don't know how to produce them, how to turn that into a WAV file on their computer, or an MP3 or something like that. So that's really what this course is for. And again, if you want to be part of that, send me an email to me@holistic-songwriting.com, and I will enroll you in that. The first 20 people to do that will, get that course for free. And essentially, all I'm asking for in return is for you to give me some feedback on what you thought about it, if there were some things that were unclear, and so on. All right, let's move on. I'll repeat this one later, maybe again, so everyone, even if you just jump in now, can hear this public service announcement. Thomas says, do you ever feel like you need a co-writer as a second set of ears to help you give feedback? Yeah, that's typically what co-writers are for, I find, to even things out a little bit. If I'm writing all by myself, there are some big blind spots that I have, even some that I know about, but I'm still bad at those. So my lyric writing, for example, is okay, but there's certain lines that I have no problem with that everyone seems to really have a problem with for some reason, or at least songwriters that I know. So especially for the lyrics, I kind of want a co-writer to help me with those few lines. Apart from that, yeah, I think if you have good songwriters, good co-writers, that's the core thing here, obviously. If you don't have good co-writers, it's going to turn out shit, because a camel is a horse designed by a committee. But if you have good co-writers, I think it really makes the process easier, and your song is going to turn out better in the end. It's going to be more commercial. It's going to appeal to a bigger audience. That's what I mean by good in this sense. Not necessarily that the song is more artistic or anything like that, but it's definitely going to be more commercial, and it's going to appeal to a bigger audience, that for sure. Just because if it appeals to 2 people at the same time, then it's more likely that it appeals to 2 big audiences. That's what I mean by that. When I make a bad song, oh, says JFL, it is because of the writing. Is it because of the writing or the performance? Because sometimes when I make a bad song, I feel like it could be a good one if I take the time to record and perform it well. It's a big part of it, which is why holistic songwriting is called holistic songwriting. You know, I truly believe that a good song isn't just the writing. It's not just the performance. It's not the production. It's not just the lyrics. It's all of those things. It's also the marketing. It's also how you portray yourself in music videos. All of that factors into how your audience perceives you as an artist and how the emotions they get from you and from your songs. So obviously all of that stuff is hugely important, and I would say that production is 60 to 70% of the big picture. Music production, that is. So if you have a great producer but your songs are only so-so, I think your songs are still gonna, people are still gonna love your songs more than if you're a great songwriter but your productions suck. So that's why I created this course, the Geek Free Music Production course, because I truly believe that you really need to be a producer these days if you want to be a songwriter. It's just impossible. You cannot send people a demo that you recorded in whatever, your shower with your cell phone, and say like, this is going to sound like that, and this is going to be a trumpet part, and you know what I'm whistling here, that's going to be a choir of 200 people. It just doesn't work like that anymore. You really need to be able to send them something that sounds like the finished thing, and I mean the finished thing. Demos today sound like the finished thing. So yeah, it is a huge part of it, and it's not enough to be a writer anymore today. It really isn't. You really have to be able to produce your own music. You have to be able to market yourself, perform your stuff, or have great performers that can perform for you. It all is hugely important, and you know, I believe a great song can go miles. You know, if you have a great production, if all these other things work, then I think it's all about then the songwriting really comes through. And in the professional league, it's really all about the songwriting, because all of the technical things, production, etc., those are typically taken care of, and then it's really all about the song. But in the amateur league, where it's not, where the production isn't up to par yet, it's really all about the production. At first, that's what I've noticed, at least. Like, if you want to be able to play ball in the commercial league, your production needs to be a certain standard, and then you can start to play the game, and then the songwriting really becomes important. But otherwise, if someone listens to the first 5 seconds of your track, it might be the best song in the world, but if it sounds like it was recorded on your toaster, then they're just going to turn off your song, and that's really not what you want. Especially if you hear that song in Spotify or something, right? You just heard Taylor Swift's latest production, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it sounds incredible, and then your song pops on and it's a much better song maybe, but it sounds like shit. Well, everyone's going to turn that song off or skip to the next one, right? So that's the problem with that. So production is hugely important. All right, Moreno says singing, writing one-note melodies for practice, right? So you asked earlier how to get better at singing and writing one-note melodies. So as for singing, what I've found is singing one-note melodies is very boring, right? For a singer and for a listener as well, it can sound pretty boring because you're just singing a single note. What helps is, especially in production, and this is where production factors into this again, is when you layer that. So you have maybe add some harmony to that or something like that to make it sound more interesting. So if you just have one note, then you have to do other things to keep that interesting. And that means the harmony has to do some cool stuff. It can't just stay on one chord, because having just one chord in the background and a one-note melody on top of that is the death of music. And I actually had written a song, and the band that I'd written it for played that song, but they changed the chords for the verse. And so instead of having like playing like 4-chord harmonies, they just played one chord, and it was the most boring song ever, and it really totally ruined that song in my opinion. So I think that's a big part of it. If you have one-note melodies, the rest of the music has to do some interesting stuff. Rhythm is obviously really important. Focus on that. And so, yeah. So the thing is with one-note melodies. Let me just grab my guitar here. If I have, so let's say we have a chord progression like something in minor. Right, so something A minor, G, F, C. So that would be 6. What did we say? 5, 4, and 1. Right. So kind of so an A minor essentially. And let's do it on the third, right? So so this doesn't completely work because the da da da, that's not a really nice sound. So because it's this kind of sound, I don't really like that since it's a flat 9 against the third of the chord. Never mind. But so let's say, but again, so that already gives you an idea of how it works for me when I'm writing mono melodies. It's really focusing on the rhythm. So also, when I'm writing one note melodies, it's never just one note. There's always going to be a little bit of something going on there. So I might start with the one note melody, and then it all usually trails off into something else. So something like da 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 da. Let's do this one again. Da 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 so that gives you a little bit of an idea. It starts with this idea of like, and it always returns to that one note. But what happens at the end of those phrases keeps changing. So hopefully that gives you a good idea. And as for production, what I mentioned earlier, layering becomes important, and also layering harmonies and pulling those way back on the faders, so like they're very soft in the background. Listen to a couple of Taylor Swift songs for ideas. She's really good at one-note melodies, and she has these big choirs in the background. Even when she's on stage, she has 6 background singers or something, or 5 or something, and they deliver that kind of harmony for her in the background to kind of fatten up that kind of boring melody, really, to fatten up that vocal sound. All right. Thomas says, there's an outro chorus, so maybe switching between the other. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. So, yeah, that could work, I guess. It really depends on the song, though, so it's really hard to say. I don't think it's possible to really give you like an educated opinion until I've heard your song. Kapar says, I have a feeling you'd love Charlie Puth's album. It surprised me. Voice Notes, that's what it's called. It surprised me in a good way since his first one was pretty bad. Great production by Puth himself. It's called Voice Notes, by the way. Yeah. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to like it. Thomas says, ending on a high note, no pun intended. Oh, there we go. Shock says, can't wait for the course. Great. Gopar says, could you write down the email address on the chat? I could. Give me 1 sec. There we go. Me at Holistic. Ooh. Nope, that's not with an H, Friedemann. This should be correct, though. This should be correct. Oh, okay, someone else already wrote it down. But yeah, it's with a dash, folks. So it's not Holistic Songwriting in one word. There's a dash in the middle there. Thank you so much for the opportunity, man. Of course, thank you for being here every week. I really appreciate it. What do you think of building a songwriter portfolio? Yeah, big deal. Definitely. It's something that you should do. Because whenever... it's the same with any industry, a creative industry. If I'm working with a producer, I want to hear what they've done before I send them my song and pay them money. So we're currently looking for a producer, and we just asked a whole bunch of people for songs, and so they sent us their portfolios, and it was typically like 3 or 4 songs, and that can be very loose. Like sometimes it's just someone sends us like a bunch of SoundCloud links, or they send us their best stuff, or oftentimes they'll ask me, they asked something like, and this is what I did as well, like when it came to film music and stuff like that, they will ask, hey, we're looking for music for this kind of a project, and so do you have something like that you could send us that sounds like that? So it's like we're making an action movie, so I'm sending them my action thriller cues or whatever. So yeah, having like a bunch of different styles covered for your portfolio is definitely great, and you usually don't want to send them everything that you got, just the ones that apply to the situation. So that's why that's a great thing. If you have a portfolio to be able to show what you can do, I think is a great thing. Gapar says, when Fleetwood pulls out his guitar in order to explain a topic, you know shit just got real. There we go. Shock says, would you recommend to writing songs to existing beats on YouTube as an exercise, or is it better to write different melodies without any instrumental restrictions, if that's correct to say? You can do that. I personally never did, but I've heard some other people had really good experiences with that. So something that I sometimes do is, well, the thing is, if you are an instrumentalist and you can play something like what I just played on the guitar, just like a super simple guitar riff like that, like a super simple chord progression with a little bit of rhythm, then that kind of becomes your groove, you know. And it's when you're playing something like that, what you need to hear in your head is what that's going to sound like as a big production. So when I'm playing something like that and I'm writing it for Taylor Swift, then I'm hearing like big drums with like a lot of room on it or something like that, and you know, all these backing vocals, and someone that I'm playing it for is just going to hear me and guitar. So yeah, I mean, if you can't imagine that yourself, and I think you should train yourself to be able to hear that orchestration, that arrangement in your head as you're playing something, even on guitar or on piano, or I don't know what you play, flute, something, because that I feel is what really makes you a great arranger at the end of the day, and a great producer as well, is being able to hear all of these different options in your head before you actually go to the machine to like put it in and turn it into a proper production. So you could absolutely do it, and I have for a while. I did this. I had a few folders on my desktop where I just produced some very basic kind of backing tracks in different tempos and with different chord progressions, but it was usually like just drums, a little bit of guitar and piano, whatever, I forgot, but it was like really basic stuff. And whenever I had an idea for a melody, I would just pull that out, hit spacebar, and just sing with that production into my cell phone, so I would have a little bit of a backing track with that. I just found that when I do that, it's a little bit more difficult to like find, like you kind of get restricted to those grooves that you used back then. And groove is such a big thing. I try to figure out different grooves for each new song that I play. Like I want it to be a little bit different at least. And so it's not something I do anymore. But if as a writing exercise, and if you're just a beginner, I would say go for it. I think that's a great exercise. Yeah. All right, what is meant by orchestration? Is it how you assign your harmonies to different instruments, as Mobius drummer? Yeah, so orchestration in the classical sense means, so for example, the great writers of the past, right? Chopin or whatever. Chopin is maybe not the best example, but say like Debussy, right? Wrote their pieces on the piano, and so the entire orchestral thing that you hear in a concert hall at the end was started just on a piano. And the orchestration is exploding this one part out onto an entire orchestra. So, and that's exactly what you said, basically. So, for example, saying, you know what, this melody in the right hand, that should be played by strings plus flutes, because that's going to give it this really silvery, very pretty and warm kind of sound. And then in this other section, maybe we have something where the basses need to be played by trombones plus tubas, and they're going to double that up, so it's going to sound really fat, and it's going to give you a really strong bass kind of sound. And I use this word orchestration sometimes, because arrangement to me just means who plays when, and kind of it's more about like, when do I stop playing and when do I start playing? That's kind of what I think about when I think about arrangement. Like, it's more of a building blocks kind of thing. If you think about it in terms of looking at a project in Logic or in any other sequencer, when do these little regions come in, right? So this track, for example, is empty for most of it, but then in the chorus we get these two blocks. So that's the arrangement for me. Like that's my personal definition, but that's how I use it. It's basically, when do people play? Like, when is there a lot of stuff? That's when the arrangement fills up. And when do people play little stuff? So in the verses, for example, then fewer regions play at the same time. And orchestration is really like, what is the exact thing that each instrument plays? So is the guitar going to double the bass here, or are they going to play different things? And what exactly is the guitar going to play? And is they going to play this pattern or this pattern? Are they going to use picking for that, or finger picking? You know, it's that kind of stuff. But in the classical sense, arrangement just basically just means what I said, and orchestration is usually just for orchestral pieces, but that's just my definition, just to be clear with everything I've said previously here. Moreno Wanza says, yeah, because you said understanding one-note melodies helps understand triads. From what I get about triads, are the new note the new note lands on the downbeat. Yeah, so typically when in songs you want to change chords on the downbeat, yeah, on the one, or maybe like around the one. So it would totally be possible instead of playing, which is kind of boring. Having a little bit of a syncopation there, like pulling that forward a little bit, I think already sounds much more rhythmical and groovier, so I like that better. But yeah, so the idea of understanding one-note melodies because of the triads, the idea behind that is what I was saying was that a one-note melody is, again, it's just a single note that you're singing. But if the chords change, that note is going to have different intervallic relationships to the chords. So for example, if I have this chord progression that I just played, something like that. Da. If that is that was a weird vibrato. If I sing this note, da, against this chord, that's the root note. Not the best chord here. Da, that's the root note. Here's the fifth. Here's the minor third. And here it's the fourth, which doesn't sound great because it's an avoid note. But that means every time you get a new chord, the meaning of that note is going to change, of that one note that you're singing. And that's why one-note melodies can sound interesting. So if I have something like that gets boring rather quickly. I think here maybe the groove kind of manages to balance that out a little bit. I think that was a groove that worked, I think. But if you just have one chord like this, and then you sing just one note on top of that, that can get boring very quickly. But if you had, sorry, what was the one? So if we sing something like, so. That already sounds more interesting because, again, the meaning of that note is going to change depending on the note of the chords. So, therefore, the one-note melody means different things in different contexts, is what I'm saying here. And so, if you write a one-note melody, the chords become really important. But my ear is not trained yet, so I don't know if I'm on key. So this is maybe something I could do a video on in the future. Figuring out like what kind of chords to play with your melody. I think it's because it's not really difficult. It's just something that you have to learn once. But I mean, I hear it now, so it's not something that I consciously think about all that much. But there we go. Anderson the Fourth says, "I'm reading The Purple Cow right now. How are you liking it? Are you digging it? Do you recommend any other books?" Well, if you're reading The Purple Cow, I can highly recommend this little book right here. Let's see. Where is that? There we go. This is a good one. This is a good one. This one maybe. So maybe these three will be good for a start. So let's start maybe with this one, The Net and the Butterfly by Olivia Fox-Cabane. I really like it. I think it's cool. It was recommended to me by Linnea, who also did the audiobook for me, the audiobook production. I really like it. It's about The Art and Practice of Breakthrough Thinking is the subtitle of this book, and that's what it's about. So I think it's really interesting, especially reading of how like people like Einstein and Edison kind of forced breakthroughs in their life. I think that was really fascinating to read. Second one is The Charisma Myth by the same author. I'm just a really sucker for Olivia Fox-Cabane. This was the first one of hers I checked out, and I had like just read a PDF, and I still bought the book because I thought like, wow, this PDF is so full of good stuff. Like this is something I want to have in my house to just like flip through every once in a while whenever I have like an important meeting or something like that. To go through this and just like read all of these techniques that are in here, and there's so many techniques for seeming more charismatic to other people. I really love it, and I think it's a great book. It's definitely something worth reading. So these two, one thing, but following up from Purple Cow, there's really one book that I would recommend above all else, and that is this book here. It might have different covers depending on where you're situated. This is the one that I have. It's the I think it's the first edition of the American version or something. Printed in the United States. This is the first edition, right? If you'd like to suggest a riff for a future edition, please visit our website. So, yeah. So there's different covers for this one. I've seen this with different covers, but it's called Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. So that's spelled S-I-V-E-R-S. Derek Sivers is the guy behind CD Baby, and this is his journey through CD Baby, what he learned from it, how he handled his business, and how eventually he went on to sell it for, what was it? For how much did he sell his business? He sold it for, I think, about 5 million monthly. That's the growth of CD Baby sales by month, right? So he was making about 5 million monthly, and he went on to sell it for 22 million, and then he donated it all to charity and started from scratch. And that to me was very inspiring and eye-opening. That being a businessman doesn't mean you have to be this corrupt, shady, power-hungry kind of person, but that you can actually do it to help people and to do something beautiful, and that even in your team, in the organization itself, you can be treating your employees well and stuff like that. So that was a really eye-opening book for me. It's something I would tell anyone to read. It's a very short book of how many pages is that actually? It's about... it's not even 70, it's 77 pages. So you can read that in half an hour, and it's so fun. It's just great. It's an eye-opening book. It just makes me happy every time I read it, and I've read this several times. So do get that one. And then from Seth Godin, I would also recommend, this is like how I got started with marketing and really like opened my eyes as to what marketing could mean. Apart from like this foot in the door kind of marketing, which I really dislike, but that it can actually be something very beautiful and creative. So the other books I would highly recommend by him, and I think I've read all of them at this point, but the ones I loved the most were Small is the New Big. That one was definitely a big influence on holistic songwriting. Small is the New Big. All Marketers Are Liars, and I think the new version is called All Marketers Are Storytellers, because that first version didn't sell very well. And there was one more. Well, let's start with those two. That's what I would recommend. That's already enough to read for the next month or so. So yeah, definitely recommend those books. I think they're really fun. Seth has a really fun way of writing. I think he's a very charming character. I don't know how he is in person. I hear he's wonderful, but I think it's yeah, those books are really fun to read, and you learn a lot from them. And what I like about his books is that they focus on one thing. Every book is about one single thing. And you could read that in a blog post and forget it immediately, but you can read his books and remember it for a lifetime. And that's how it happened with me, because if I'd read somewhere Be Remarkable, I would be like, oh yeah, cool, all right, next blog, right? You forget that immediately. But reading Purple Cow really changed the way I think about marketing. And so I highly recommend those books to anyone who's interested even remotely into marketing. In marketing, I think it's super fascinating to read. Okay, let's see. There we go. I remember you saying that your favorite era of classical music was impressionist, but who was your favorite impressionist composer? Debussy, Ravel, someone else? Those would be up there for sure. I mean, I've analyzed a lot of pieces by both of them. I would say Debussy is probably my favorite. Man, Ravel has some really good stuff as well. I actually have a score of him here somewhere, I think. Let's see. Here, there we go. for Deafness and Chloe, which is such a beautiful piece. But yeah, so I really love this, but La Mer and some of Debussy's other pieces just really have a special place in my heart. But there's just some really great melodies, and studying these scores was so helpful for writing film scores. So yeah, so those two are really up there for sure. Geffar says, please don't ever dab again or I'll unsubscribe. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just doesn't fit me as a person, does it? I just actually saw this on a YouTube video today. I was like, why is every YouTuber doing this now? Is this a thing? Should I be doing that? And I got really like insecure for a second about something as stupid as dabbing. Before we move on, guys, I want to quickly repeat my offer from earlier. So I'm working on a music production course, as you well know, and it's pretty much done. So there's going to be 3 big parts, and the first part of these 3 parts is essentially done. It's like maybe 3 hours long or so. And as a gift to you guys for being here in this live Q&A and you know, asking me great questions and for doing this, I want to give out access to that course as a sort of beta testing pre-roll thing. You get what I'm saying. So if you send me an email to me@holisticsongwriting.com, you can find the message here in the chat. The first 20 people to do that will have free access to that course. The only thing I ask for in return is to give me a little bit of feedback, what you thought of it, if there were some things that you thought were missing, if there were some things you didn't understand, if I should clarify some things. Beta testing, essentially. So that's what we're doing right now. So send me an email at holistic-songwriting.com. Again, find the email in the live chat. And the first 20 people will get that course for free, just as a gift to you guys. Okay. All right. Let's see. Moreno says, is half an hour of practice daily enough for ear training? Yeah, I think so. I think that's about how much I did when I studied it, and I think it took me a few months to really get a hang of it. But yeah, that should definitely be enough. Thomas says, just so I understand, the avoid note is that note interval in relationship to the chord. Yes, exactly. So the avoid note, let me just show you this on guitar here. Actually, it's easier to see on piano, but I don't think you guys will see if I play something back here. Will you? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe it's going to be easier to show you guys this on piano. So maybe we can just take this here with me. Wow, look at this. Camera tricks. Unbelievable. Oh. This is so exciting. Okay, so how's this? All right, I think that's fine. I think that should be fine. So say we're playing this chord here, C major, right? That's these 3 notes, C, E, and G. The avoid notes in that chord are all the notes directly above these 3 notes. So D flat, F, and A flat, right? Those are the notes that we don't want to hit in our melodies or elsewhere. Oops, sorry. I realize I have to hold the camera a little bit lower. So that's the avoid notes. Now, D flat and A flat typically won't be notes that you're going to be playing anyways because they don't fit in C major. But F is a critical one. That's one people do get wrong all the time. It's easy to hit that, to sing that note sometime. But you don't want to sing it over C major. And it's easier to, like, it happens a lot if you have a song that starts with a C and then goes to G and then whatever, something else. If you have a melody that's centered around C, that's not a problem over C because that's just the root note of that chord. But if you go to G, then that becomes that note right above the B here. And again, that's an avoid note. So that's what avoid notes are. Yeah, and again, it probably makes sense to say this, but these are notes that you probably want to avoid. Because what it sounds like, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, like, if it's just a rule, why the hell would I care? But here's what it sounds like. So that's the interval you're actually singing there. And that's not great. You don't want that in a pretty pop song. Like if you're writing a metal song or something really dark, then that might be a good decision. But otherwise, not really something you want, right? So there we go. Okay. I'm really enjoying the Purple Cow. It really changed my perspective for finding an audience, especially with the sneezers concept. Thanks for the other recommendations. Definitely, man. I'm really happy to hear that you're liking it as well, because it really changed my point of view on things big time. What's your rate for song critique if I email you one? Let me just send you this link here. Oh man, okay, so if you just go on Google and do a search for professional songwriting feedback and holistic songwriting, so holistic and then professional songwriting feedback, like those are the keywords, then you're going to find the page easily. You can find my page. It really depends on how many songs you send me, but it's affordable, I think. It's not very expensive. Mobius says, glad to hear you like Debussy and Ravel as much as I do. Ravel's orchestrations were really sublime and the harmonies are something else. Absolutely. Also really like Satie. He was a lot simpler but great melodies. Completely agree. Couldn't have said it better. Thomas says, I've never heard that rule before in modern songwriting. Best teacher out there. Oh, thank you very much. All right, if you want, we can go into that a little bit deeper. Talk about avoid notes a little bit more. Because, so the thing is, this can get dangerous really quickly, but there are a few exceptions where avoid notes might be acceptable. And actually, you know what, before I show you, I'd rather answer a couple more questions here. I actually have a blog post on this called, if you just do a search, a Google search for holistic songwriting and avoid notes, you're going to find it. It's not difficult to find. But it's an entire article that's just devoted to the idea what is an avoid note and how can we avoid it. So what are some options if you really want to sing that note but you can't because of that rule, and also what are some exceptions, like when is it okay to have avoid notes. So for example, if we have something like if we have a melody like that where the avoid note is part of a lick, so it's just a passing tone, so that note right here, that's the avoid note essentially in G major. Not a problem. Da da da, that's the critical note, but since it's just a passing tone, da da da, then we go into the fifth of the chord, da da da, then that's not a problem. If it's just a passing tone, no worries at all. There's also some things like, so this is something that I found really interesting when I was writing my first piece. I remember this very well. I was writing my first piece with like a pedal bass, and so it went something like, or it wasn't like that, even remotely like that. But as an example, right? If we had a song like that, let me think about an example here. So the E should be an avoid note here. So if we have like da, da, da. So if I sing it like that, it's an avoid note. But what's interesting is I can play the avoid note in the bass. So the E that I was just singing is playing in the bass, which should be an avoid note against this B major chord because it's half a step above the D sharp, the third of the chord. But that's not a problem because the issue isn't, so it's because that's just a major 7 essentially. So it's essentially this note. That's not the problem. The problem would be if it was this note, because that sounds like shit. This one sounds fine. This is dreamy kind of. Major 7s are fine. So if you have the avoid note below, or what should be the avoid note below the note that it would create that interval with, then it's not a problem. I know this is really complicated and it almost never applies, so just stay away from avoid notes usually. But just check, like if you're playing an avoid note, just check if it really sounds terrible. So if I have this note here, think that sounds fine. Again, if it was something like, what do we say? So this is not something. So this doesn't sound really good, because then you really have this, right? Then you really get that flat 9 interval. So maybe that didn't really help. Maybe that was more confusing than helping. Again, read that blog post. I think it's going to be a little bit more clear after that. There it's really like clearly structured and not so freeform as it is here. Okay. We have two more minutes, so I'm going to go through these last ones really quickly. Sorry, guys, for not spending more time on these. JFL says, why do people always want to make songs in English, even if it's not their native language? I think it's because it just depends on the listening habits of people. If you usually just listen to American music or English music, then it's usually easier to write songs in that language just because it seems so familiar. Like, it's just the language of music for you. That's how it is in my case, for sure. And I write some German songs, and more in the last couple of years than ever before, but I don't enjoy it as much. I just think the German language doesn't really lend itself very well to what I want to do with melodies. It just feels like there's so many things that you can do with the English language rhythmically that you can't do with the German language, and I'm sure it's like, it's just me being oblivious to all these things, because like a lot of the things that I could do in the German language, just because I didn't get deeply into it enough already. Because there are some German rappers especially that I think are incredible. Like, they do some really cool things with the German language. And people like Bodo Wartke, who's like a cabaret means something else in German than it does in English. So he's like a political stand-up, I guess. Or not, it's not even political, but like it's not comedy, it's not just stand-up, it's like it's a little bit more of a sophisticated version of that. That's what we call cabaret here in Germany. But he has some really smart lyrics, and they're all German. But why do people always want to make songs in English? I think that's the reason, man. I think it's just because that's what they're used to from their own listening habits. And we had some teachers at Artes that always wanted us to write songs in our native language. And I did, and I still don't like it as much. Like, for English, everything just flows for me, and it feels more natural to me, and that's probably because everything I consume here in Germany is English. Like, when I'm meeting friends, obviously that's not going to be in English, even though I have some Dutch friends and I talk English to them. But you know, TV, reading books, and I read, you know, books every single day. I read all of that in English, audiobooks. All of that it's all English. So for me, English is almost like my native language in some way. Thomas Wolf says, loved your blog post on the 3 melody types, very helpful. I heard the most, thank you very much, by the way. I've heard the most memorable melodies are a combination of leaps and steps balanced. I don't know if I would agree with that. I think those melody types are cool for writing, for getting a new idea, to try out something new. But there's plenty of melodies that are super memorable, that are just steps. I don't think there's many that are just leaps. I don't think there's any melodies that really sound good if it's just leaps, unless you look into jazz music, but that's what a lot of people don't like. So I think for commercial music, it's mostly going to be steps, sometimes leaps, but there's plenty of songs that don't have any steps, that are just one-note melodies. Welcome to New York. Welcome to New York. Welcome to New York. It's been waiting for you, welcome to New York. That is, I mean, there's a little bit of stuff happening, but it's mostly just one note. There's almost no steps or leaps whatsoever, and it's super memorable as well. As you could tell from my great representation of it here, remembering all the lyrics. That's how memorable it was. Cool. So, Fallfish says, hi. Well, you're a little bit late, Fallfish. Mobius Drummer says, more exposure, JFL. Yep, that's what I said. It's because... Nihar says, I guess because the audience is more, so exposure is high. Yeah. Oh, that's also true. Yeah, I mean, you can write songs in English just because your market is bigger. But the bigger the market, the more difficult it is to poke your head through, you know, because there's so much other stuff going on. I mean, if you want to be successful in Germany, it makes more sense to sing in German. It really does. That's why I've been writing so much German stuff lately. For artists, because most people just request German songs now. So now English music used to be this really big thing here in Germany. Right now we're sort of, I think, at the end of a span of very German music. So like everything is like on the radio is, not everything, obviously we listen to a lot of the American charts as well, but like there's definitely this big surge of German lyric songs going through the radio right now, and has been for a couple of years now. Did you like Passenger Hello High Water? I did. Is it possible to make a good sounding track by only programming MIDI and recording vocals? It is. It's always cool if you can add in at least one instrument, one harmonic instrument that is not MIDI. So one good example of this is there's a video on YouTube, I forgot by which channel. Genius? I think it's Genius probably, where the guys from Despacito talk about their production of it. And that whole track, I mean, it sounds like plastic, because it is plastic. It's all MIDI, and it's not the best samples. But there's this one acoustic guitar in like in the beginning of the song, you know. It's that guitar that really spruces up that whole track, and that's what really makes it great. Without it, it feels really lifeless. I mean, it's still a great track, but that really is what gives it the spice that it really needs. So obviously, the more live instruments you can have in your track, the more unique it's going to sound, because the big problem with MIDI instruments is that everyone has access to those sounds, and so you don't really sound that unique. And to someone who is very interested in sound design and who thinks sound design is hugely important for creating a personalized stamp for yourself, like an image, I think making your own sounds, even if it's messing with MIDI sounds yourself, like Trent Reznor, for example. I mean, he uses a lot of synths and makes those sounds as well, but there's a bunch of composers that just like run some MIDI tracks through a bunch of guitar effects or something like that to really make it sound their own. So you can do something like that as well, you know. Just mess with the sound. Even doing something like, here's the Michael Jackson trick. This is what Michael Jackson's producing crew would do for a lot of their synths and all of those kind of instruments. So everything that wasn't played live, they would play it through speakers and record it in the same room. So they would put a microphone in a room and have those tracks played through speakers and record that again, just so it has a little bit of that lively atmosphere. So it sounds like it was recorded in a room, as if it was a real instrument and not just bits, you know, zeros and ones. Bytes, I guess is the word. So that's it. Zanvazi says, more Hit Song Architect episodes? Yes, these are coming. As I said in the beginning of this video, I've been a little bit under the weather this week, and I always have this week once a year where my allergies get the better of me. But yes, all of that is coming. But first, we have another artist series to do, and I think we might have to reschedule this one by 1 week, possibly, maybe to Saturday if I can fit it in. But cool. Until then, thank you, Freedom of Fit as in Holistic Songwriting. You are awesome. Thank you so much, Nihar. You are awesome too. And again, very last time I'm going to say this here. You can already leave if you already heard my public service announcement. But if you're interested, I have a new course coming out on music production targeted at songwriters that want to explore music production that haven't done so yet. So it's for people who are very musical and who get how songwriting works, but who have really no clue how music production works, that want to learn how that works. So I have a course that is the first of 3 big parts. This first one is about 3 hours long, and it's all about getting to know the software, recording your first couple of songs, knowing where everything is, learning the shortcuts, being quick in that environment. And I'm giving it away for free to the first 20 people who send me an email at me@holisticsongwriting.com. If you want to find that email address, look for it here in the live chat, and send me an email saying you would like to enroll, and I will do so, and for free. You don't have to pay anything. It's just as a thank you for being here in the live chat and watching this. It's just like that. So the only thing I ask for in return is to give me a little bit of feedback on the course. Let me know if there's any big chunks that you feel are missing, or if there's some questions you still might have, so I can make the course perfect for the actual release. So this is kind of a beta release kind of thing. Thomas says, thanks for biting the bullet today. Freedom if it doesn't. Got some good cues in. You're the best. Thanks so much. Mobius Drummer says, I've sent the email. Would love to beta and give good feedback for you. Great. Thanks so much, guys. I really, really appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully this little gift is a sign of that I mean that when I say that. And have a beautiful week. Cheers, guys. Wait, let me look into the camera when I say that. Take care and stay good.